figures showing weaker than expected economic growth, is there any end in sight for the cost of living crisis? Joining us this morning is Deputy Leader of the Opposition and Shadow Treasurer Ted O'Brien. Ted, good morning.
Good morning, David.
Well, how does this slower than expected economic growth translate into a hardening of living standards in Australia?
Well, it makes it difficult for a few reasons. Firstly, it means that the government is going to just keep on spending too much taxpayers' money. So at the moment, you have the spending of government running faster than the economy itself. And that's really bad news because the more money the government pours into the economy, it's effectively competing against households and businesses for goods and services. So prices then go up. Prices go up means inflation is high, and then the Reserve Bank says, well, hang on, inflation's too high for us to reduce interest rates. So what does that mean to the average household? Well, it means they're just going to be paying more for their mortgages. So the average mortgage holder in Australia is paying an additional $1,800 every single month since Labor came to office. That won't change. In fact, the market commentators are now saying the next move on interest rates might in fact be an increase, so it could get worse.
But is it too simplistic to suggest that government spending carries all of that blame, or certainly much of that blame, with the slow growth in the economy? I mean, are there other factors?
Oh, look, it's primarily due to that. There are other factors, but they're all interrelated. So another problem you have in the economy is the private sector isn't doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And what that means, again, it goes back to, well, the government is playing such an active role. It's spending so much money, it crowds out businesses. And so businesses are clamouring for resources. And because government keeps spending, it means resources go to government activities instead of private sector activities. Government activities are not as productive as the private sector. So when productivity is low, well, real incomes are low. And that's why you've had a dip, about 2.2% drop in people's real incomes. So people are poorer today than they were, 3.5, 4 years ago. Why? Well, productivity is low. And a big driver of that is the private sector is really competing with government in the real economy. And government's winning because they've got so much money, they just keep pouring it in, and resources are misallocated to more unproductive activity.
Yeah. Well, we're expecting interest rates to be kept on hold next week, well, fingers crossed. But after that, well, not so sure. The Reserve Bank Governor's comments last night or yesterday would suggest that might not be the case. Can you try and paint the picture for our listeners what that will do to the cost of living crisis?
Unfortunately, this means it only gets tougher from here because what it says is if the government keeps spending money, then it will drive prices up. And that's really what the Reserve Bank Governor was saying in Senate estimates this week. Again, it just keeps going back to that core message that the government has to stop its spending spree. And so when a government pours all this money into the economy, it means that it just swallows up so many resources. So if you're the average punter and you go into the shops, it means everything just becomes more expensive because the government is forcing demand to exceed supply. And when there's fewer goods and services to go around, because everyone's competing to get the same thing, prices go up. So that means that your grocery bills will go up. Electricity is a big problem. It's gone up 40% since the Albanese government came to office. There's no hope that's coming down. So electricity prices, energy prices will continue to rise. Rents will continue to go up because the government isn't delivering on its promise of new properties. And so again, it sort of just goes back to those old rules of economics, just demand and supply. And we're in a situation right now in Australia where we have more demand than supply can handle. And that just forces the price of everything up. And that is why we have so many of the economic commentators calling on the government to change a lot of its economic policies from taxation to regulation to energy, these sorts of things, David.
Well, it's grim listening, isn't it? That everything going up. And
unfortunately, just a few weeks from Christmas, it really is. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, but it is.
No, not at all, because we're trying to get to the bottom of it. And the obvious question off the back of all that is, well, how would the coalition manage the economy differently?
Well, there's two imperatives that we would work on. Immediately, we would be stopping the spending spree, and two, would be looking to grow the economic pie. So on the spending spree, there's three things that need to be done. One, Jim Chalmers is the first Treasurer since Peter Costello to have no quantifiable rules in his budget to control his spending, which means that there's no incentive for government ministers to stop spending. So one, they have to introduce budget rules. Number two, they've got to drive more efficiency into government because they've just had enormous growth in the public service. There's an enormous amount of inefficiency. And number three, they've got to do what like households do. You know, you sit around the kitchen table and if the household budget is tight, you just go through all of your expenses and say, well, what are we got to cut back on? What are we doing that we shouldn't do? It's also what small businesses do, line item by line item. That's the third thing they need to do to stop the spending spree. And then they need to grow the economic pie. And that means they need to reduce regulation. They need to do everything to make energy affordable again. And they need to start really going hard on technologies, including artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies, which will drive greater efficiencies in the economy so all boats can rise. They're the two priorities. Stop the spending spree, grow the economic pie.
And sadly, the coins and notes sitting on that kitchen table are becoming less and less. Ted O'Brien, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thanks very much, David.
Thanks.